under Scotland's capital. How did these tunnels become a den of criminal activity?
The illegal trades decided, why are we not using this space? It's vast, it's dark, it's perfect.
Underneath Italy's busiest port, why did these ancient aqueducts and royal escape routes become a haven during World War II?
This was about something good. They survived.
And what Cold War relics are hiding in plain sight beneath Finland's first city?
This swimming pool works as a shelter for 3,800 people.
Beneath our feet lie extraordinary spaces, caves, and tunnels.
The span and the size is just crazy.
They've been designed and built by us,
This is the only one with a castle.
as well as formed by nature. But how were they created and adapted? By who and why?
You've got to face your fears.
Throughout history, subterranean life has captured our imagination.
I feel so privileged.
We're going further and deeper to unearth the mysteries, the stories, and the secrets of underground worlds. Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, a city rich in heritage, but few visitors appreciate that many of its fine Georgian streets stand on top of a network of hidden bridges.
The bridge was built to span the Cowgate Valley, under the bridge as it were. A lot of people get confused really how there's so much space down here.
Within the bridge, a labyrinth of cellars and passageways that lay forgotten for over a century, until an amazing discovery.
So I thought, oh, more vaults. It was quite exciting finding all these pieces.
But those vaults now reveal a sinister side to the city's past.
They needed a constant supply of human corpses to keep dissecting them for their students. So you had the rise of body snatchers, grave robbers.
Scotland is the UK's northernmost country, and its capital, Edinburgh, is home to nearly 500,000 citizens. The city stands among hills and valleys. When it was growing in the 18th century, the citizens refused to be limited by the geography. They built bridges to join the hills together, and the first one was across the Cowgate Valley. Southbridge took 3 years to construct. It's 300 meters long. When it opened in 1788, a whole shopping street was built along the top. Simon Bendel has been guiding visitors around the arches and subterranean spaces within the bridge for 3.5 years.
The bridge was built to span the Cowgate Valley, to link the old town in that direction to the new suburb, supported by 19 large arches. Originally those arches were open, so people could pass freely back and forth underneath the bridge. But quite quickly, tenement buildings were built either side of the bridge, sandwiching the bridge, and then closing the arches.
These were homes for the growing population, and some were built to nearly the same height as the shops on the bridge. So on the South Bridge shopping street, you would have no idea that you were actually standing on a bridge. In the 18th century, the now hidden arches were subdivided into vaults of various sizes. The plan was to rent out the vaults and use the money to pay for the upkeep of the bridge.
These chambers were originally used as storage areas for businesses on the bridge above, shops on the bridge above, and also as workshops, so people like jewellers and bookbinders and leatherworkers.
There are at least 120 of these vaults. Jamie Corstefine, a Southbridge expert, has spent 9 years learning about their history.
They would make them workshops. They'd floor the big arches up to 3 times and then split them in half again. They ran corridors to connect them all. It would keep a source of income, and they would keep that money to help for repairs and maintain the bridge. It was a great idea, it really was.
For 30 years, the vaults worked well, but Southbridge was built on the cheap. What was once a bustling network of studios and warehouses quickly descended into a living hell.
The bridge leaks from day one. The water sits on the top and it sits on the surface and it seeps through. As you can see up here, we have the stalactites. This is caused by the water dripping through from above.
And this wouldn't have been fresh rainwater we're talking about. This would have been water infused with horse droppings from the bridge above. And the contents of those nasty buckets, as they called them, the slops buckets that the people used to throw out the window at night into the street.
This raw sewage gradually seeped and dripped through the bridge, creating stalactites of effluent. The all-pervading damp turned the vaults into a rat-infested, disease-ridden slum.
Because of this damp, disgusting conditions, really, businesses quickly abandoned these vaults.
160 years later, the former Scotland rugby star, Norrie Rowan, accidentally became an expert on this underground world when he bought one of the old tenement buildings that backs onto the South Bridge.
I mean, Edinburgh's known as the City of Seven Hills. Because it's a city of seven hills, it's a city with lots of bridges connecting all these hills.
In the 1980s, while Norrie was converting his tenement into luxury flats, he discovered a blocked doorway which led into the vaults.
Started renovating the sub-basement, started digging everything out. So then I found a tunnel which led into the first of the vaults, which made me realise there was more and more vaults. And here you see some stalactites. When I first broke into some of the chambers, the stalactites were that big, they reached from the ceiling to the floor.
Norrie didn't stop with this first discovery. He continued to delve deeper into the system, where he found rooms mostly filled with rubble. He dug them out, one bucket at a time, not knowing why the rubble was there or what rooms lay beyond.
I found all this area in here. All these little bays here were full of straw. Yeah, and this was virtually untouched from, I don't know, the 18th century, early 19th century. I used to come every morning and just dig for 2-3 hours. It was quite therapeutic. Shavers Weekly, which was the students' magazine at the time, they nicknamed me Mole Man.
Norrie now runs an entertainment venue and bar in the spaces he's cleaned out. But why were the vaults filled in with rubble in the first place? The answer lies in the early 19th century. When the shopkeepers and artisans moved out of the damp vaults, Scotland's criminal underbelly saw an opportunity that was too good to miss, to ply their illegal trade away from the prying eyes of the law.
The illegal trades decided, you know, why are we not using this space? It's vast, it's dark, it's perfect.
And when the good guys moved out, that's when the bad guys moved in. And then the vaults were used by gangs of thieves, people running illegal whiskey stills, women pursuing the oldest profession.
Anything that was illegal above ground was perfectly legal within the confines of the structure of the bridge. There was no police here.
Because of their cheapness, the vaults also became a living space for citizens who had fallen on hard times.
Desperately poor people would have taken shelter down here. This was a time when people were pouring into Edinburgh from the Highlands and from across the water in Ireland. So whole families, the poorest of the poor, would have lived down here in appalling conditions. And that continued right on to the 1860s.
In amongst the poor families and petty thieves, there operated the most feared criminals of them all.
And that's when these vaults were handed over to the criminal types, the bootleggers and the body snatchers.
In the 1830s, Edinburgh was renowned for its medical schools, and a grisly new trade sprang up. Enterprising criminals would dig up newly buried corpses from their graves and sell them to student doctors so they could study human anatomy.
If you could deliver a body to a doctor in a good condition, you could get perhaps £10, which are a year's wages for a labourer at the time. They needed a constant supply of human corpses to keep dissecting them for their students. The law at the time said only the bodies of executed criminals could be legally dissected. So you had the rise of body snatchers, grave robbers, or, as they preferred to call themselves, the resurrectionists.
To avoid the risk of arrest by the police, body snatchers worked in the dead of night.
What grave robbers used to do is strip the bodies of any shrouds or clothes or any wedding rings because they feared they could be charged with theft. And that was a capital crime. You'd hang for that. But if you were caught carrying a naked body around, it was more of a kind of weird new grey area. you're more likely to be charged with the lesser crime of desecrating a grave.
In the early 19th century, the South Bridge vaults were apparently a hunting ground for the infamous criminals William Burke and William Hare. They embraced the crime of selling dead bodies for cash and took it one step further.
The curious thing about Burke and Hare is they were neither Scottish nor were they body snatchers. They came from the north of Ireland in search of work. I suppose you could say they were innovators. They cut out the hard work of digging up their bodies and they just killed people instead. So they were serial killers.
The killing of 16 people in 10 months and Burke's execution and public dissection as punishment shocked respectable society. The notoriety of the South Bridge vaults in this case meant that respectable Edinburgh would rather see them forgotten. By the 1870s, they'd been filled in with builders' rubble and consigned to history. Despite Norrie's extensive clearing of the vaults, there is still much to discover.
Kept finding more chambers, and it was quite exciting finding all these pieces. I kept thinking I was going to find the crown jewels or something really valuable.
This is a tiny, tiny section of this entire structure when it first opened. It really was an underground labyrinth of tunnels and chambers.
Norrie's taking Jamie into one of the deepest areas of the South Bridge vaults.
So is this the original point of entry?
It was through here, yeah.
It's an area which Norrie has dubbed the Well.
When I dropped the floor level here, lifted a slab here. As you can see, I found this big hole. And there's a couple of tunnels going off to the left there and the right.
This shaft drops for at least 10 meters and suggests a lower level that yearns to be explored.
I've never been along there, so I just uncovered this big hole, but I had enough work on my plate at the time and never did anything about it, so I've just covered it up. I built this wee wall around it to stop anybody going down it. So I suppose the next thing is to start having a wee look and see what's actually down there.
Because these ledges, have you any idea what these could have been from? Because they're different.
No, I think that's just lintels spanning over
Just
the tunnel.
spanning.
As you see, there's a tunnel goes off to the left there.
Yep.
No, it doesn't seem to be a well with all
It's
these
not
tunnels
well.
off it. Eh?
Well, exactly, because wells don't have archways in the walls, and wells are not paved at the bottom, that is clearly paved.
While there are still areas of the labyrinth waiting to be explored, most of the vaults have been given exciting new uses since Norrie rediscovered them 30 years ago. Music venues, comedy clubs, and even wine bars paying homage to one of the original uses of the vaults.
It got a nickname of Whiskey Row. In 1815, one of the illicit distilleries was busted in here, this basement here.
Despite the troubles along the way, Edinburgh's South Bridge is one of many great structures that have transformed the city.
It is a brilliant piece of engineering.
In its full extent, I don't think we'll ever find out or comprehend just how massive this place really was.
The underground spaces here gave the city's inhabitants both shelter and suffering.
I think the reason why I find them so interesting, these vaults, is simple as they look, they're kind of like a window into the social history of Edinburgh.
The stories of these spaces still capture people's imaginations to this day.
Well, I think it's great that they're still being used here. They are 200 years after they were built and they're still in use for something. And they'll probably keep reinventing themselves as time goes on.
Italy in southern Europe, a land of illustrious history, reaching back to the Roman era. The south of the country was also inhabited by ancient Greeks, whose influence can still be seen to this day. One of the country's largest ports is Naples, 230 kilometers south of the capital, Rome, and close by the ancient but still active volcano, Mount Vesuvius. The old city was built from volcanic sandstone named tuff, or tufo, as the locals call it. They mined it from the geothermal bedrock, leaving behind these incredible underground spaces.
The city was built thanks to this rock.
But how did the ancient engineers achieve these feats of excavation?
It's like a parallel town in the underground.
What uses are being found for tunnels which date back more than 2 millennia?
This was a tunnel underneath the city for royal families.
And how many more underground worlds are to be discovered?
Wow.
Naples is a thriving Italian metropolis, but it was founded by Greeks in around the 8th century BC. They colonized the southern coastal areas, and their lands were known as Magna Graecia, or Great Greece. Naples was one of their foremost cities. Having dug out the volcanic tuff to build above ground, the Greeks were left with a 450-kilometer network of tunnels, running 40 meters beneath the city. The Greek labyrinth is known as the Napoli Sotterranea. Enzo Tassini, who has a PhD in architecture, has been studying this underground world.
The first time I came here, it was really extraordinary because here you can see exactly what the Greeks were doing when they were excavating. The Greeks were finding some cracks into the tufa stone and putting a piece of wood in the middle and creating the void around it and taking the material for the building upstairs.
The Greek excavations in the 8th century BC were the beginning of subterranean life beneath Naples. It may seem risky to build an underground system so close to a volcano. But the Greeks did all this around 800 years before the famous eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, and nearly 2 millennia before the geological risks were understood. The Greek underground system was developed further by their successors, the Romans.
You find traces of Romans that with the engineering system were creating a city. So I really think it's a magic place.
After a series of battles, the local Roman tribes reclaimed the territory from the Greek colonists in around the 4th century BC. Among their many engineering achievements, they converted the Greek tuff mine into a bespoke underground freshwater system of channels and wells, some of which are now mapped and accessible to visitors. This water system was supplied by an even bigger one, a massive underground aqueduct, which brought in water from a mountain spring 70 kilometers away. It was known as the Aqua Augusta. The Romans used it to supply 9 major towns, including Pompeii. The aqueduct was named in honor of their emperor, Augustus, and the entire system was nearly 150 kilometers long. Local journalist Marco Porio is meeting Enzo to learn some more about the historic water system.
The aqueduct we are in is very, very ancient. I think it's about 5th century before Christ. And all the ancient aqueducts were connected together. You don't imagine that you can go down and find this quiet, mysterious place.
They started excavating and found this great, stone that could be excavated easily and in a safe way, creating these voids.
The Roman engineers lined the aqueduct with plaster to seal it, to stop water leaking through the porous tuff.
Or Romans discovered that, just putting some plaster on the tufa stone could be a collection tank for the rainwater collection. And they start to connect everything, all those voids, to the ancient aqueduct.
This great underground project beneath Naples holds a unique place in the hearts of its citizens.
The underground, for Neapolitans, we love this place because here we can find the full history of the town, from Greeks, the Romans by the aqueducts. I think here the time is frozen. It's like a parallel town in the underground.
The vast infrastructure is still intact. This network continued to supply Naples with water until the 17th century, when it was eventually replaced and slowly became disused. But not all the subterranean spaces are unused. Marco has come to see an experimental project researching spaces formerly used for water supply to farm without any water.
Wow. That's a wonderful place. That's incredible. This is a place full of humidity. That's why the life is possible underground. We have an experiment made by the local university in which we can see plants growing up without water, only by humidity and electric light. We don't need sun to have life underground. We don't need water. You can see these plants growing beautifully.
Thanks to projects like this, Italy is now among the group of countries like the UK, the USA, and China using subterranean spaces to feed their ever-growing populations.
Basil is very, very important for Neapolitans. We use basil in the pizza, for example, or in the pasta. That's very, very particular. And it has a good taste. We can try it. Pretty good.
The volcanic tuff beneath Naples continued to be relevant to the city's fortunes long after the Aqueducts was abandoned. In the mid-19th century, another underground project was begun.
This was a tunnel underneath the city for a royal family, so everything must be beautiful.
This tunnel was originally intended for the exclusive use of Naples' ruling family, the Bourbon dynasty. Taking their name, it's now called the Galleria Borbonica. But it was to play a far greater role in the lives of everyday Neapolitans almost 100 years later during the Second World War. Elena Corvino is one of the expert guides.
The Bourbon Tunnel is 430 meters long. 5 years to build this place, which was completely handmade.
But why was the tunnel created? Italy in the 19th century was a mass of rival states. But there was a popular movement towards a unified country. Riots in Naples caused the Emperor Ferdinand II to fear for his survival. So in 1853, he ordered a tunnel to be dug from the royal palace to the Piazza Vittoria near the sea as an escape route and to deliver a defense force if necessary. Like the ancient water system, the Galleria is 40 meters beneath the surface of the city, but most Neapolitans have little idea of what lies beneath their feet.
I discovered that this place is amazing. It's full of history. As you can tell, it's so quiet. This is thanks to the rock, the tuffo. It's a soundproof rock, so basically you can hear the city, all the noises.
From 1853, workmen digging by candlelight spent around 3 years on the tunnel. But it was abandoned once Ferdinand's dynasty was overthrown. His territories were eventually unified into the new Kingdom of Italy in the 1860s. The tunnel lay disused for 80 years, but found a new use during World War II as a bomb shelter, and the Italian army improved the access for civilians.
As part of World War II bomb shelter plan, the soldiers provided different entrances, and this was one of the 5 with 100 steps. It was really narrow, but Italian soldiers enlarged all the tunnels so people could just run and reach a safe place.
Naples was the most bombed Italian city during World War II, suffering 200 air raids in 4 years. Allied forces were desperate to disrupt German supply lines to North Africa, and whole areas of the city were reduced to rubble. With almost 10,000 homes destroyed in the city above, the Galleria now provided life-saving shelter to stricken civilians.
We know that there used to be a medical aid zone as people could get injured. There were areas for pregnant women because we know that some children have born in here. There were areas with beds because people could sleep in here during the nights.
Historians have made fascinating discoveries about the living arrangements in the Galleria during World War II.
When we found this place, we just thought how people could be in here. I mean, during the bombings, but also living in here if the house was destroyed. We found many double beds, but each one was not used by a couple like nowadays. 4 or 5 people, maybe 6, one family with one bed.
Historians were surprised to find graffiti, probably left behind by a civilian who sheltered here during the Allied bombing campaign.
And we have a special writing in here, Noi vivi. Noi vivi means we are alive, and this is the most beautiful writing that we found. This was about something good. They survived. People during the war have been saved thanks to these places.
For more than 2,000 years, Vesuvius's volcanic rock under Naples has been excavated to create ambitious subterranean spaces. In 1986, work started on a new underground railway. Naples now has more than 20 kilometers of metro line, serving 22 stations. Art historian Maria Corby has an in-depth knowledge of the newly built art stations, as they're known, an exciting architectural project.
The underground in Naples was very important to transport people from one place to another, and today it's still important because underground we have the metro trains.
International architects were entrusted with designing new stations to make these public spaces aesthetically pleasing. It's another instance of the ingenuity shown by Neapolitans over thousands of years in their attitude towards underground worlds. Garibaldi is Naples' central station, the work of the prestigious French architect Dominique Perrault.
The station is 15 meters deep, and the light comes down till the platform layers. This is maybe the more contemporary station. A lot of mirrors and steel.
2 stops away is Universitas Station, created by Anglo-Egyptian architect Karim Rashid in 2011. The vibrant artworks are based on continuous profiles of human faces, but they also conceal structural pillars. Toledo Station is the deepest on the line at 55 meters, the work of Catalan architect Oscar Tusquets Blanca. Inspired by the shape of a volcano's crater, the design incorporates conical shafts that bring light deep underground from wells at street level.
It was inspired by Vesuvius, the symbol of Naples, and this is the crater of light.
Color is used throughout the station to suggest the layers of the city. As the passenger travels down, it changes to signify descent from ground level down to below sea level.
So from the warm colors of the top, we are going in blue mosaics of the sea.
The confidence expressed through these innovations is only the latest chapter in the city's story of underground worlds. Around 1 million square meters of space beneath the city has been mapped, but it is thought that there may be a further 2 million yet to be discovered.
Surely the city should think about how to map all these voids.
I think this place is very special for us.
You know, a heritage that we have to keep safe for the future.
Finland, a Scandinavian country in the north of Europe between Sweden, Norway and Russia. The capital, Helsinki, is now using relics of the past to create incredible underground worlds for all its citizens. How have the ingenious Finnish people transformed their Cold War shelters to give them a new role in the 21st century?
We have over 900,000 shelter places, more than we have citizens.
What exciting uses have been found for the disused emergency bunkers?
This is our track. It's about 300 meters long, and here is our long straight where you can get up to the top speed of 60 kph.
Finland's capital, Helsinki, has been developing an underground master plan for the entire city, reusing older subterranean spaces and creating new facilities for the population.
Here in Helsinki, we have actually created 12 million cubic meters of extra space underground.
Geologist Erend Oudman has been working since 2012 on some of Helsinki's most important underground structures.
The dark yellow, these are locations where we can build other caverns.
The city is built on granite, which makes excavating large spaces underground relatively safe, inexpensive and sustainable.
This granite is really strong, and that means that we can blast holes and make excavations in it.
Finland started to build its underground worlds in the 1960s. The country was neutral during the Cold War, but they excavated hundreds of underground bunkers to shelter their citizens in the event of an attack.
It's a unique feature that we have here in Helsinki, that we have so many tunnels, and if you compare that to other countries, this is really, in Helsinki, is very special.
In the city area, we have over 900,000 shelter places, more than we have citizens.
Andreas Schneider is the head of emergency preparedness at Helsinki's City Rescue Department. He's responsible for hundreds of Cold War emergency bunkers hiding in plain sight all over the city.
It is my responsibility to put the plans for the civil defense and the protection plan of the city of Helsinki. These rock shelters that are inside the rock, we have over 50 in Helsinki area. The biggest ones are for 10,000 persons.
As Cold War tensions subsided in the 1990s, Helsinki found imaginative ways to use the underground bunkers whilst keeping them operational. Combining defense capabilities and community facilities would later become the underground master plan.
The shelter system consists of independent shelter places all around the city, and they are in the double use. So we are trying and planning to use them in normal situations as widely as we can. So they are not just laying empty or as a storage rooms, so they are actively in the use of the society and the citizens.
There are over 400 facilities around the city, some of which can be transformed into shelters in 72 hours. This one has been incorporated into the largest leisure center in Helsinki, the Itäkaska swimming pool.
This is absolutely the biggest one in Finland. About 1,000 people visit this place every day.
Oleg Jauhonen began working here when he was a lifeguard and is now in charge of daily operations. A swimming pool underground has obvious benefits in a country with cold winters.
Now we are inside the rocks, so the heat are staying inside, so we don't need to heat this place much. So we are saving energy because we are underground. This swimming pool works also as a civil shelter for 3,800 people. This rock is really solid here. So in Helsinki, this was one of the best places to build the shelter and the pool.
Divided into 2 levels, it can provide safety, food and water for up to 14 days. The shelter's capabilities have been incorporated into the design, including the maintenance floor below pool level.
Constructed so that we have at least 50 meters of the bedrock on top of us. So then the doors will take all the pressure.
In the event of a nuclear attack, there are 2 doors operated by hand. The first takes the initial impact from the air pressure, protecting the people inside the shelter. The second is a 5-centimeter thick steel door to prevent any radiation and contaminated air from entering.
We have the doctrine of defending the whole country and defending all the civilians and not to evacuate them. And in Helsinki, when we are not planning to evacuate the people, we have to protect them where they are. So we're trying to keep the city functioning at all situations.
Reusing existing Cold War shelters throughout Helsinki is a major part of the underground master plan. Around 3 kilometers away from the swimming pool is the Formula Center. It's another bunker that's been given a new purpose, this time as a go-karting rink. And Jukka Maanpää is the manager.
We are actually a bomb shelter, but we are renting this place from the city of Helsinki. We are about 20 meters underground and we run a go-karting place here since 1995. We get about 10 to 20,000 customers per year. You don't have to worry about the weather here, and well, since we are using wasted space, our rent is pretty cheap. This is our track. It's about 300 meters long, and here is our long straight where you can get up to the top speed of 60 kph. Our cars run on petrol. We have pretty strong air conditioning here, but you can imagine the fumes. We get rid of them pretty quickly.
Like all Helsinki's dual-purpose facilities, the Formula Center can be rapidly switched into shelter mode in the event of an emergency.
If we received an emergency call, we would have 24 hours to get rid of all of our stuff. All the locals, about 5,000 people, would come here and be safe from whatever emergency up there is.
Each of these spaces was built to meet civil defense needs, yet they have fantastic dual uses. Even so, they are not the only Cold War surprises to be found in Helsinki. One of the city's architectural masterpieces is the Templiokio Church, also known as the Rock Church. It was designed in the 1960s by architects who were infused with civil defense concerns of the Cold War era and the need to shelter Helsinki's citizens.
This is a church that dates back to 1969 when it was built.
Heli Suhala-Uvelic is an expert on the design of this Lutheran church, which burrows 13 meters down into the granite bedrock.
The architects, these 2 brothers, Timo and Tuomo Suomalainen, have been working for the army earlier, so probably that's where they got the idea from to build into solid rock. They blasted really their way into the bedrock, which is millions of years old. And you can still see the marks on the walls where they have been drilling and blasting. And they wanted to keep it that way because they wanted people to see that this is part of nature.
Beneath the copper dome, the rough-hewn rock walls were left bare on the advice of a leading acoustic engineer to enhance the space for musical performance as well as worship.
Apart from being a church, we also have around 400 concerts per year. The acoustics here are fantastic because the surfaces aren't smooth at all.
Given that this beautiful church was designed at the height of the Cold War era, it should come as no surprise that beneath it lies yet another nuclear blast shelter.
It was, of course, highly important in those days, and even today, actually, in a time of war, the bomb shelter downstairs would be used. So in a time of crisis, people could live down here, at least for a period of time. Nowadays, we use this as a backstage area for our orchestras and choirs performing here.
The Helsinki Master Plan encompasses underground worlds from more recent decades. The Reimagining wastewater plant operates 20 meters beneath the bustling city streets and opened its sluice gates in 1994. Paula Lindell is one of the managers.
This is the longest corridor in the treatment plant. We use bicycles and electric cars to go around, as it's quite a long distances for the workers.
It's the largest sewage facility in Northern Europe and processes around 270,000 cubic meters of wastewater each day.
It's 14 hectares underground space. It's around 20 times of the football field, so it's quite a good use of space also.
The design allows for more than double the regular capacity, up to 700,000 cubic meters of wastewater. The need for this could occur during severe winters, with sudden thaws of ice and snow.
So here you can see the layout, the water process part. The blue part is underground. It's underground because in Finland we have quite a cold winter and also we have really hard rock, so it's easier in Finland to go underground than in some other places. And the temperature is constant when you have underground plant, so it's easier to maintain all of the equipment.
The plant is designed to retrieve and recycle energy and organic matter for conversion into power and fertilizer. The first stage involves screening out large non-organic objects which cannot be processed.
All of the stuff have come with the wastewater, and in the screening part we have taken it out of the wastewater, so a lot of stuff that should not ever enter the sewage network.
Dentures, spectacles, cell phones. How they entered the sewers is open to speculation.
Of course, toys, so perhaps children may have put it into the toilet. I can only guess where it came from.
Once these large non-biodegradable items are filtered out, the water flows through 2 stages of treatment. The first involves separating materials that can be turned into compost and biogas.
So we are more or less 25 meters underground, and for this process there is 7 similar sized lines, so it's 1/7 of the wastewater going through this process tank.
The wastewater left over is sent for final chemical treatment before it is fit to be released back to Mother Nature.
This is where the magic more or less happens. Here we have the biological process, where we have bacteria working and cleaning the water. They get nitrogen out of the wastewater and also organic material. And we have 9 different lines for this part of the process.
The Reimagining plant handles vast quantities of sewage. It replaced 12 other treatment works around Helsinki.
When the wastewater is cleaned here at the treatment plant, after that it goes to one big tunnel, and it goes 8 kilometers below the Helsinki city center, and after that also 8 kilometers to the open sea, and it's mixed to a lot of volume of the seawater. The treatment results are world class here, and when the treated wastewater goes to the sea, it does not have an effect on the environment.
The architects and planners of Helsinki have designed their subterranean spaces initially to protect the population, and in more recent years, to wow them with high-concept experiences.
It is almost an underground city if you think about that. We are looking where are possible locations where we can build more underground space for all kind of activity.
And with many shelters now fulfilling dual roles, the Finns have the best of both worlds.
We are looking into the future.